Hey everybody, Brandy here doing my comments from my Stampin' Studio today. Today I want to share with you a beautiful Christmas card that I created originally for my monthly class that I have here in my home, and I decided that I was going to replicate it and actually use it as one of my Christmas cards for this year. And I am using the beautiful Blizzard stamp set and the coordinating Thinlit die that comes with it. Well, if you purchase it in the bundle anyway. All right, so at the end of this tutorial, I'm going to show you where you can get the supplies that I used in this video, as well as all the dimensions for the paper and whatnot that I use. So stick around and I will share that with you at the end of this video. All right, let's turn the camera down. Okay, all right, so this is the card that we're going to make today. This is the card that I created for my monthly stamp class I have here in my house. And it's got a lot of different pieces. I'm going to kind of show you some of the supplies that I use, and others will just sort of come about when we actually use it for the project. But the main stamp set I used is Beautiful Blizzard, and if you'll look here, these are all of the stamps that I use. So I used a lot of stamps from this stamp collection. The color combination I'm using today is Night of Navy and Coastal Cabana. When I originally made this card, I had wanted to use Pool Party, and that's actually the color that I used for the class. However, somebody in the class unfortunately had used a stamp that had Night of Navy on it and tried to re-ink their stamp in the Pool Party. Well, I was able to kind of soak out the Night of Navy using my, this is actually a camping towel, and I just sort of pressed and soaked up all of the blue ink. And then I used my re-inker to re-ink it. Unfortunately, when I re-inked it, I used the Coastal Cabana re-inker instead of the Pool Party. And so now, this stamp set, or the stamp pad, is no good. So, little words to the wise, when you re-ink your ink pads, make sure you've got the right color. So, because I don't have any Pool Party right now, I've got to reorder another pad. We're going to be using the Coastal Cabana. Now, these two colors look really great together as well. This is a little bit darker than I originally wanted to have, but it still works. So, those are the colors that we're going to use. All right, so what we're going to do is, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to stamp the background card, which is on this Whisper White. And I'm going to use our grid paper because I'm going to be using some of the area to stamp off, and I don't want to get that on my, my mat. All right, so the first thing we're going to use, or first thing we're going to stamp, is this kind of big blotchy thing. Not exactly sure what that's supposed to be. I think it's kind of a big snowflake or something. Not quite sure. Doesn't have any defined edges, which is why I really liked this stamp set, because if you're someone who has a hard time getting a clear stamped image, this stamp set really is great to do that, because you can't go wrong with these two shapes right here. All right, now because this stamp is so large, I prefer to use this ink pad on the bottom. I'm sorry, other way around. I like to use my stamp on the bottom, and then I just sort of tap the ink on top of it. I find it a little bit easier to do. All right, and so now I'm going to turn it this way and stamp this corner. Okay, gonna re-ink again. Again, does not have to be perfect, which are my favorite kind of cards because I am a little OCD and sometimes that does bother me. All right, so I'm done with that big one. Now I'm going to use this little snowflake blotch. And since it's smaller, I do like to do this. I'll tap on top instead of doing it the other way around. All right, and then I'm going to put one there. I'm going to turn it around and put one there. And I may put one, nah, I'm gonna leave it there. That looks good. All right, so the next stamp I'm gonna use is the Swirl. This kind of looks like wind, I guess. And I'm gonna stamp it right there. I'm going to turn it around, stamp off the page. Now you'll notice that it looks like I got a little bit too much ink there. I'm not terribly concerned about that, is because I'm going to be putting vellum over it and a lot of other embellishments, so you're not going to be able to see that. But what happened is that I got a little bit too much ink on the edge of that stamp. All right, so let's try it again. Be a little bit more gentle and not force it in there. Okay, put that guy right there. And let's see, I think I want that right there. Okay. All right, so that's it for the lighter color, and I usually try to do the lighter color first and not do the darker color. It helps me to try not to make the card so busy. When I do it the opposite way, somehow I get too much dark and not enough light. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp the snowflakes, and I'm going to use the Night of Navy for this. Okay, and I'm going to start right here, kind of stamp off the page. I love that kind of look. And then stamp here. Stamp in the middle, and then I'm going to stamp off the side there. Okay. All right, now the next thing I'm going to stamp are these little tiny dots. And you got to be really careful with this one. It's really easy to over ink this particular stamp. So I'm just going to kind of add a little embellishment here and there, not too much. Stamp off the page there. One more right there. All right. So, you know, this may be a little too busy for you, and sometimes, you know, I think back, maybe I could have done a little bit less of the snowflakes, or maybe I could have done a little bit less with those dots, but I'm happy with it. All right, so that completes that piece of the card. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to adhere it to the front of the card. And where's my bone folder? Okay. I always love my cards to have nice, crisp edges. Okay, now for the paper, we are going to adhere it at a diagonal. And when you do this, you need to make sure before you press down that you've got it where you want it. Now you want to be careful that you don't glue it so that part of the card is off the page. You want to make sure that it's still on the page, otherwise it's not going to fit right in the envelope. Now for the backing of this, I can use my snail. All right, again, I'm gonna position this just so it's off kind of at a diagonal. The next thing I'm do is I'm gonna put the vellum in the opposite direction. So I'm gonna do it off, but I'm gonna do it kind of in the opposite direction. So the paper was this way, I'm gonna turn the vellum this way. Now, you're gonna want to use glue dots for this. And what I basically do is I take the glue dot roll, and I'll put one glue dot right there, and then another one right there. Now the reason why you want 2 glue dots at least is because if you put one, it can still allow your paper to pivot. I did this recently and discovered it after I'd already assembled the whole card, and my paper was kind of moving. So I want to have at least 2 glue dots. You can have more. And I put it in the center because my little sentiment is going to hide it. All right, so let's lay this down here. Get those glue dots on. All right, so that's that. All right, so I'm going to put this aside. And now I'm going to create the sentiment that goes on the front. and I forgot to get my embossing powder out. Hold on one second. Okay. So I've got these little blue strips here, and I'm going to be stamping this in the center. And that reminds me, I forgot something else. Hold on one second. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to stamp this with Versamark, and then we're going to put our white embossing powder and heat emboss that up. All right, so I've measured this just so that if I can try to get it in the center exactly, it's going to work out perfectly with my triple banner punch. So that is the trick. All right, so let me go ahead and stamp this up. Oh, you know what? We should use our embossing buddy first. I'm going to use the embossing buddy to clean off any oils or anything that would attract the embossing powder in an area that I don't want it to be. All right, so I'll go ahead and ink that up again. All right, here we go. So I'm going to try to get that as straight as possible and in the center. Okay, looks good. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do, close that up, bring over my little coffee filter. And I've got another video on how I store my embossing powder. I'll put a link to that in the video or down below, so if you're interested in how I do this, you can see it there. All right, so I'm going to go and put the embossing powder on it. Perfect. That doesn't often happen. All right, put this to the side. All right, I'm going to use my, actually, one second, let me close this embossing powder up. That's the last thing I want to do is heat emboss all of my loose powder. Oops. Okay. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to use our heat tool, which is not plugged in. Oops. Okay. Okay, note to self, make sure you turn off the heat tool before you plug it in. All right, here we go. All right, once it is heated up, you'll notice that it will be kind of a, it'll shine, it'll raise up and shine, and that is that. All right, the next thing we want to do is to notch the sides. I'm going to use my triple banner punch. I'm going to turn it upside down, and then I'm going to just kind of make sure I get that centered. All right, and you have your sentiment all done there. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we're going to adhere the sentiment to the front of the card, and I'm going to use the dimensional dots to do this. You can use the larger sizes if you want of the dimensional dots. I don't currently have any on hand right now, so I'm just going to use the smaller ones. And I use 3 just to kind of give it some stability. Okay. And then I want to make sure that I kind of get it level with the actual blue card. Okay, all right, so there's that. All right, so the next thing I want to do is make the inside of the card, and to do that, I'm going to use my Stamparatus. I find that stamping sentiments is a lot more effective if I use the Stamparatus, because it, you know, basically puts it in the same spot every time. So what I've done here is I've actually cut a piece of the grid paper out, and so that it lines up exactly with the corners. Now I'm going to be stamping off the page down here, so I cannot have my cardstock all the way to the edge there. So I'm going to make sure that every time I put my cards, when I do mass production of this, I'm going to put it in the same spot. If I wanted to, I could just kind of put a little tick mark here that tells me that's where I want to line up my card. Alright, so I want to make sure that I've got my card stable by putting the magnets on it. And I don't want to put any magnets down here because that's where I'm going to be stamping. Alright, and so now I've already, actually, hold on one second, I think I read. You will put your sentiment where you want it, lift it off, and then if you want to, just kind of make sure that it's straight, and you can use the grid on the plates to be able to do that. Alright, I think there was some residual ink on there, so I'm going to turn this paper over. Okay, now let's see here. Let me clean my stamps. Because I'm going to have to be taking them off the block and putting them on my Stamparatus. So I use my Stampin' Scrub, which I absolutely love. Okay, take that off, and I'm going to use this one. Okay, all right, now usually when you clean the stamps you will get some sort of ink left on there, so I want to make sure that I don't have any ink left. So I'm just going to kind of use a scrap piece of grid paper to kind of make sure that I get all of that excess ink off. Okay, that should be good. All right, so I've got the sentiment not exactly where I want it. Yeah, that looks more centered. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to be inking up the sentiment with the Night of Navy, and then also I'm going to be stamping the Snowflakes with the Night of Navy. Now you'll notice this is both on top of each other, these stamps, so I'm not going to be able to put them both on one plate. I'm going to have to use both plates. So because I'm going to be using the Night of Navy with this, I'm going to go ahead and put the Snowflakes on the same plate. So that way I can ink up this one and ink up the other one all in one fell swoop. All right, so how do I want this? I think I want this to go like that. Okay, so I'm going to lift that guy up. And then this guy is going to go right here. I'm going to use the other plate to lift him up. All right. Okay, so here we go. Now, I have used an empty or a blank Stampin' Spot, and I put some Night of Navy re-inker in here. I find that these are easier to use when using the Stamparatus, especially with smaller stamps. Okay. And actually, I broke my rule. I should have stamped the lighter color first, but it's okay. I don't have any of my Stampin' Spots of this new Coastal Cabana, so I'm just going to use my pad. And I hate that. Oh, I don't know if you can see that. Sorry about that. Put this down here, so I just inked it up this way, but I'm getting ink everywhere. It's because I don't have a really large space to work and still be on the camera. All right. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and stamp that down. Now, when I see that, I realize that I want that blue a little bit further down. So let's redo this card. I'm going to use this as the scrap page, and I'm going to readjust where I want that. I want that guy right there because I want him to stamp off. All right, let's see how this looks. Okay. Okay, so one of the things I forgot to mention is that when using the Stamparatus, I like to put a stamp case underneath the plates. It makes it easier to ink up, which is what I should have done in the first place, but nevertheless. All right, so let's just use this as a scrap piece just to make sure I've got everything where I want it, and then we will redo on a nice clean sheet. All right, so again, I don't have a Stampin' Spot, which I need to make, of this Coastal Cabana because it would be much easier. All right, let's ink him up, stamp him down. All right, then I'm going to use my Night of Navy stamp spot. Okay. That looks much better. All right, so let's redo that. Let's recreate that with a blank piece of paper. Remember, I put that notch right there, so that's going to tell me where I'm going to recreate that. Place the magnet so it holds the paper down. All right, I'm going to do the lighter color first. I like the lighter color to go down first. All right, then I'm going to use my Night of Navy ink and Stampin' Spot. Ta-da! All right, that looks great. All right, and so that's the look I was looking for. All right, so I'm going to set him to side. I'll move my Stamparatus out of the way. Okay, I'm done inking, so I can close this. Close my Stampin' Spot. All right, so now what we're going to do is, make sure you can see that, I'm going to adhere that into the center, or the inside. I'm going to use my snail. I'm going to see if I can get that. Need my glasses. Ooh, it's hell getting old. All right. I'm going to try to center that as best as possible. Okay. All right. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put these little snowflakes on here. And I used a bit of the silver thread to kind of give it some bling. And then I used some rhinestones. I didn't actually get the rhinestones from Stampin' Up because these were a little bit smaller than what I had at Stampin' Up. So I'll put a link down below if you're interested in where I got those. All right, so to get those snowflakes, you're going to put your Blizzard Thinlit through the Big Shot. And one thing I wanted to point out to you is that when you do that, I recommend that you use the regular Big Shot platform and then the thin die adapter. I found that if I used my magnet platform, that it was a little bit difficult to get out. It didn't cut all the way through. Now, it could vary from big shot to big shot, but especially if yours has not as much wear and tear as mine does. And you'll find it's fairly easy to pull this up. The only difficult part is all these little bitty dots that stay on the die. And if you have your piercing tool from Stampin' Up, you can use that. Otherwise, I just use the edges of my scissors, my little paper snips, and I just kind of poke those through. That takes a little while, unfortunately. I think there is a tool that you can brush back and forth, and I have it, but I don't know where it's at, so I just use my little snips. All right, so how did I get the snowflake with the silver thread? Let me just show you with one of these. And what I like about this die is that you could take out all of these pieces and then actually use that to go over your card and then have some sort of color background in the back. So that's kind of cool. All right, let me pull out two of these guys. And they're a bit delicate, so you gotta use light tugging. You don't want to tug too hard. All right, so I'm gonna use these right here. And what I wanna do first is to add the thread. And how I did that was I used a glue dot. And I put a glue dot on the back of it. Then I took my thread, cut me off a piece. And I had a little piece sticking out, but I basically just kind of smushed it down to the glue dot. And then I just kind of wrapped it the way I wanted it. And there really is no right or wrong way of doing this. I just wanted to make sure, I just wanted, you know, a little bit of a silver bling to the snowflakes and to kind of give it a little bit more texture. Yeah, and I'm just basically looping and placing it back down on that glue dot, and that's kind of holding it together. Okay, well, I can trim off the edges as I like. Okay, then the next thing I did was take another piece of glue dot and kind of went on top of it, and that kind of seals it in per se. All right. And I did not use a dimensional on the snowflake, but I just sort of placed it where I wanted on the vellum. Okay. And then let's do the other one. Again, just sort of making big loops, bringing it back to that glue dot. This one's a little bit difficult because there's a hole cut out in the middle of the snowflake, and so my skin or my fingers are kind of pulling that glue dot up as I turn it, but it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going to hide all of that with the rhinestone. All right. That looks good. Just turn that off a little bit. I'll put another glue dot in there to kind of seal it. What do I do with my glue dots? Here it is. There we go. And I'm going to put that right there. All right, now I'm going to use my rhinestones. What did I do with my rhinestones? Here we go. Again, these rhinestones are not a Stampin' Up product. I will post a link as to where you can get these. I think they're the perfect size for this project. All right, so I'm going to put one right there. I think I'll put a bigger one right on the sentiment, but gosh. All right. And these little tiny ones, I have tweezers. Let me see here. Oops. Here we go. There we go. All right. Looky there. Isn't that pretty? I love this card so much. I am going to be making it for my Christmas cards for my friends and family. And then I am thinking about maybe selling them. So we'll see how that goes. All right, let's turn the camera back. All right, I hope that has inspired you to make your own Christmas card, especially with the Blizzard, what's it called? Beautiful Blizzard stamp set. I love this stamp set, and as you can see, a lot of the stamps are very useful to make even on just one card. And I love it when I can find a stamp set that is so versatile and that, you know, I get a lot of use out of all of the stamps. That one has a lot of sentiments on there, so it's really great to kind of mix and match your Christmas cards. I also want to invite you to my Christmas card swap. It's taking place in November. I'll put a link down below where you can get information about that. And basically what you do is you create 5 Christmas cards, all of the same design. There are some specifics that you have to adhere to, and I'll make sure that you get a link to where you can find that. And then you send those Christmas cards to me with a prepaid self-addressed envelope. Then I will swap them out with all of the other participants, and then I send it back to you, and then you get 5 different Christmas cards to use for your own inspiration or just to simply send on to somebody else. It's a lot of fun, and I can't wait to do that. All right, now down below I'll also put a link down to my blog post where I will have all of the dimensions of all the paper cuts that I used today, and also the link to that rhinestone that I used that is not a Stampin' Up! Product. All right. Okay, I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope you did enjoy it. Please, please do comment down below if you have any other questions or if you have any other stamp sets that you would love for me to feature on a future YouTube video. All right. Don't forget to hit the like button if you like the video, and please, please, please do me a favor and subscribe. That way you get notified every time I upload a new video. All right, life happens. I comment. Stamp me some love. Bye-bye.